Henry IV, the founder of the dynasty, had the following statement, which is very striking. He said that if Americans understood money and banking, there would be a revolution the next day. I happen to believe he's right. And the fact that we did not have a revolution is, to me, strong evidence that Americans still don't understand.
Hello humans, the severe economic impact that this crisis caused by corona fever has caused, regardless of whether this was a physical or mental fever, will have a very big and long-lasting impact. The question is not if, but how bad will it get. Personally, I hope it all goes to shambles now, so we can get this over with. We need a crisis like this, preferably yesterday. Have I gone mad? Am I delirious with COVID fever? Most definitely not. Not more than always has been the case, at least. Want to find out what the fuck I'm talking about? Don't go anywhere and join me for another edition of Utopolis ONE in episode 37 of I'm Just Gonna Say It. Oh, and Mr. Trump, way to go on those Q-tips. Here we go. Opinions differ, but we all agree on one thing. The economic backlash of this crisis is going to be a big one. Now, we can't sit around in our by now oh so familiar rooms and be fearful, showing we didn't learn a thing from all the opportunity to self-reflect during these times of isolation, or we look ahead for a change instead of looking back, and we act now. But this acting will start with a realization which is necessary in order to proceed. Money has got to go, notwithstanding the function it has had as an improvement on bartering and such, and a way to exchange services to one another without being taken advantage of in this world. Not because that was or is our nature, but because of the system set up to make us behave in such a manner. You see, money really is the root of all evil. You cannot serve God and Mammon at the same time, is what they say.
Pecca quando uno fa un'azione per il denaro. Quanto al primo, pecchi di idolatria. Ecco il perché. Perché il denaro diventa idolo e tu dai culto. E per questo Gesù ci dice: non puoi servire all'idolo denaro e al Dio vivente, o uno o l'altro.
All those clichés are clichés because they are true, but we never give them a second thought. As I mentioned before in episode 31, by now in 2020, the only thing giving money any value is our belief in that value. The gold that used to back up the US dollar, for instance, is long gone. A total of 4.46% of all US dollars in circulation is still backed by gold, less than 1/20th. It is therefore a fiat currency, not being backed by any physical commodity. And with the euro and the yen, the story is roughly similar. Okay, so money has no real value except what we decide it has. It's a faith-based system, with the Federal Reserve as its St. Peter Cathedral and money as its redemption. Roll clip. So, where does money come from? From the governments, most people will answer. This, unfortunately, is wishful thinking. Or a result of our ostrich-like tendencies. Better to rip off that band-aid right away. All central banks are privately owned, with the Federal Reserve being the shiniest example, if only because of that ultra-misleading name. If the US government needs more dollars, they give an IOU to the Federal Reserve. Who then prints some nice pictures on some pieces of paper and hand it over to the government, who distribute this to the banks. And as if by magic, the paper is now suddenly worth hundreds, if not thousands of times more than its intrinsic value. But it doesn't end here. After that, the banks do their own bit of magic with it, called fractional reserve lending. Banks are by law required to only keep 10% of their non-physical money backed up by real bills. This means that if they get 100,000 in physical money, they can then lend another 900,000 in digital currency to its customers to live up to this 10% standard. After all, 100,000 is 10% of 1 million. What do customers do with this money? They put it in the bank, starting the cycle all over again, enabling banks collectively to create an insane amount, millions out of 100,000 in physical cash. This is fractional reserve banking, elaborately described in the book Modern Money Mechanics by the Federal Reserve in Chicago from 1961. As you can see here, they describe, for instance, what gives money its value. What then makes these instruments, checks, paper money and coins, acceptable at face value in payment of all debts and for other monetary uses? Mainly it is the confidence people have that they will be able to exchange such money for other financial assets and for real goods and services whenever they choose to do so. Or another example, in the absence of legal reserve requirements, banks can build up deposits by increasing loans and investments so long as they keep enough currency on hand to redeem whatever amount the holders of deposits want to convert into currency. This unique attribute of the banking business was discovered many centuries ago. Link to the whole document in the description. Now, this fractional reserve system stands opposed to full reserve banking, where the currency is backed fully by either cash or gold. The invention of the fractional reserve system is one of the most devious of the 20th century and went right over most people's heads. It has always been doomed to fail, however, that this is built in. This was and is an economic certainty. And this is no fringe theory or whatever. Just listen to this debate going on in a British Parliament.
Steve Baker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House has considered the subject of money creation and society. The methods of money production in society today are profoundly corrupting in ways which would matter to everyone if they were clearly understood. The essence of this debate is who should be allowed to create money, how, and at whose risk. It's no wonder that it has attracted support from across the political spectrum, although I think looking around the chamber, the Rochester and Stroud by-election has perhaps taken its toll. But I'm grateful to... One of the most memorable quotes about money and banking is usually attributed to Henry Ford. He said, "It's well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." Well, let's hope we don't have a revolution, Mr. Speaker, because I feel sure we're all Conservatives on this side. How's it done? Well, the process is so simple, the mind is repelled. Whenever a bank makes a loan, it simultaneously creates a matching deposit in the borrower's bank account, thereby creating new money. Many times I've been told that this is ridiculous, even by one employee who'd previously worked for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation of the United States. The explanation is actually taken from the Bank of England article, Money Creation in the Modern Economy. It seems to me rather hard to dismiss. Today, while the state maintains a monopoly on the creation of notes and coins and central bank reserves, that monopoly has been diluted to give us a hybrid system because private banks can create claims on money, and those claims are precisely equivalent to notes and coins in their economic function. It is a criminal offence to counterfeit banknotes or coins, but a banking licence is formal permission from the government to create equivalent money at interest. Now, there are a wide range of perspectives on whether this is legitimate. The Spanish economist Jesus Huerta de Soto explains in his book, Money, Bank Credit and Economic Cycles, that it is positively a fraud which causes the business cycle. Positive Money, a British campaign group, are campaigning for the complete nationalisation of money production. Now, some want the complete denationalisation of money. Cryptocurrencies are now performing the task of showing us that that is possible. This argument that banks should not be allowed to create money has an honourable history. The 1844 Bank Charter Act was enacted because banks' issue of notes in excess of gold was causing economic chaos, particularly through reckless lending and imprudent speculation. And once again, I'm minded that the only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history.
So, money. They lend it to you against interest. And interest is the sneakiest tool in the history of men, almost. Because where is this interest supposed to be paid from in the money supply? It doesn't exist, and that's what people need to grasp. Someone lends money because he has none, and the money he pays it back with has to be earned by taking it out of someone else's wallet. So the money to pay it doesn't exist in the money supply. So more money has to be printed or loaned by the government, in other words, to make up for this difference, enabling inflation, which they fix by printing even more money. So when you go to a bank for a loan, all they do is change some digital numbers on your account. That's it. Think about that for a moment. And what do you have to do? You have to wager your freaking house. It seems like a bit of a lopsided agreement, right?
I put an unbounded vacuum inside a temporal field until a world developed. I then introduced the people of this world to the wonders of electricity in the form of a device I call a flubel crank. What they don't know is that 80% of every crank's energy output gets channeled out of the miniverse to be used by us. No more Google boxes.
I gotta tell you, Z, with no disrespect, I really think what you're doing here is unethical. It's not cool.
What?
You got the people on this world slaving away, making your power? I mean, that's what I call slavery.
No. They work for each other in exchange for money, which they then...
Well, that just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
Eek, Barba Dirk.
That's also a way of putting it. Did you know one man in Minnesota in 1968 called Jerome Daly fought the foreclosure of his house, basing his defense on the argument that the bank had not actually loaned him any money but simply created credit on its books? Daly argued that the bank had thus not given him anything of value and was not entitled to the property that secured the loan. And guess what? The jury and the Justice of the Peace, Martin V. Mahoney, agreed with this argument. As you can see here, the jury returned a verdict for the defendant, and the Justice of the Peace declared that the mortgage was null and void and that the bank was not entitled to possession of the property. The justice admitted in his order that his decision might run counter to provisions in the Minnesota Constitution and some Minnesota statutes, but contended that such provisions were repugnant to the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights in the Minnesota Constitution. Through this system, all people, including governments, are kept in constant debt. And what does debt represent in this economy? Work. Work you have to do to make money to pay back the debt. If you take humanity as a group, we can never pay back the debt in that system. It's built in that we can't. Therefore, it is also doomed to eventually fail and crash. Which it has done already more than once. Sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. And we just keep on desperately trying to pay back our debts, which has to come from other people's pockets. So in the process, we are competing with each other, stealing from each other, hating each other, envying each other, all because of a lack that we perceive that doesn't even really exist, but is posed upon us by this monetary economy. Remember the meme about Lincoln and Kennedy and all their similarities? Yes, they are true and striking, but let's give a few examples. Both presidents were elected to Congress in '46. Both presidents were elected to the presidency in the year '60. Lincoln and Kennedy each have 7 letters. Both were particularly concerned with civil rights. Both wives lost a child while they were living in the White House. And both presidents were shot on a Friday. And both were shot in the head. Now, this is striking, and this list goes on and on, but the most important similarity isn't on there, and that's kind of pisses me off. This is the fact that they were the only 2 presidents in history that ever tried to escape the tyranny of the Federal Reserve, proposing that the US government create their own currency. Lincoln with the famous greenback cash, after the green ink they were printed with, and Kennedy with Executive Order 11110 on June 4th, 1963. You can look up these names yourself, and you'll see. I will put the links in the description as well. Need I say more? We are being held hostage. We are still slaves, basically. And if a slave speaks up, he gets his head cut off. Or shot off in these cases. My friends, it is time to wake the fuck up and realize the situation we are in collectively. We are indeed in crisis, but not the kind the media is stuffing down our throats. And we are indeed fighting a crown, which is what corona means in Latin, but not a crown of the viral kind. The current crisis provides us with an opportunity.
Look on the bright side, Dad. Did you know that the Chinese use the same word for crisis as they do for opportunity?
Yes, crisis-tunity!
Right on. With all the cost that has come with it in terms of money, it is obvious that we will never recover from this within the current monetary system. Now, there are people proposing to switch back to a full reserve banking system, for instance, run by the government, which would be a step in the right direction, of course, but also pose a lot of risk for misuse. But why don't we just do away with the whole antiquated concept altogether, switching to a resource-based economy? In a resource-based economy, people do not make decisions. They arrive at them through the use of advanced technological tools that incorporate the scientific method. There is no Republican or liberal way to design an airplane, as Jacques Fresco used to say. So why do we use these outdated worldviews in society today, when we recognize that society is a technological invention with its component variables really no different than the component variables of an airplane? We then see that our orientation towards so-called government should be purely scientific as well. A resource-based economy is a system in which all goods and services are available without the use of any system of debt or servitude, like money, credits or barter. All resources become the common heritage of all people, not just a select few. And there are more than enough of them, resources I mean, for everybody, in spite of what you have been told. The only thing that is in short supply is money itself. The premise on which this system is based is that the earth is abundant with plentiful resource. Our practice of rationing resources through monetary methods is irrelevant and counterproductive to our survival. Abundance, efficiency and sustainability are, very simply put, the enemies of profit. This scarcity logic also applies to the quality of goods. The idea of creating something that could last, say, a lifetime with little repair is not efficient in the market system, for it reduces consumption rates, which slows growth and creates systemic repercussions, such as loss of jobs. The scarcity attribute of the market system is nothing but detrimental for these reasons, not to mention that it doesn't even serve the role of efficient resource preservation, which is often claimed by people defending it as a necessity. And like I said before, we don't have to do this globally all at the same time. We just start at one or a couple of cities and infect the rest of the world, pun intended. Let's show Corona how it is done. Now, if we do this, we could totally pass on the financial consequences of this lockdown and just leave them in our wake. We might wave at them as they go by, but that's as far as our contact would ever go. That doesn't mean it would be a super smooth or easy transition, but considering the alternative and the payoff, it is more than worth it. For sure, less bad than remaining in the current system and taking it. So it's basically one of those questions with only one correct answer, yes or yes. It only takes a generation to adapt people to such a new system, and since generations happen every year these days, we still stand a chance, I think. If you look into your heart and feel this out, you know it's the way to go. Human nature doesn't really exist separate from its environment. All abhorrent behavior is based on perceived lack or scarcity. Utopolis ONE, omnium abundantiam. Let's look at an old clip which couldn't be more relevant and inspiring today than when it was made, over 80 years ago.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children. Victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
Well put. More of my ranting in the next Utopolis ONE. I'm going to close this one right here. Please like, share and subscribe. Everybody needs to hear this. We need to reach that critical mass, you know? So tune in next Friday for another edition of Proof for the Paranormal. Links to my Patreon page and the channel merchandise store are in the description. Also check out our new website at www.imjustgonnasayit.com. Until the next one, take care of each other and yourself. Keep meditating for our collective evolution. Stay safe and love y'all. Zaiche.
Ecco il perché.